Welcome back to Talk of the Town on WHTC, Holland's Cool FM, on WHTC.com, and on the WHTC app for your smartphone. Once again, here's your host, Gary Stevens.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town for this Wednesday, August 26th, fourth Wednesday of the month, which means we have a conversation with the Ottawa County Clerk, Register of Deeds, Justin Roebuck, on the other side of our table this morning. Justin, good morning. Hope all is well.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Thanks, Gary.
As I like to say, it's also good to be seen. I don't feel like playing the invisible man. If you have a question about not only elections, but other things as well, we'll chat with, you can chat with Justin Roebuck, 616-395-1450. Let me put on the other hat. Register of Deeds. It was a topic, an aspect of which, when Bob Janetsky was with us a week ago, he mentioned this, and we got a couple of calls about it, so I'm going to bring it up with you. And that is the fraud alert program that your office do provide. And it's sort of like, this is a good time to remind people about it, because we've had some instances where we've had some attempts of, as I like to say, getting the widow's farm, the rustlers in the old cowboy movies.
That's right.
It's not a little bit more high-tech than that, but this fraud alert will prevent people from having their property basically taken out from under them. Yeah,
it's one of those really simple things. It's completely free. And it's one of those simple things that you can do that I equate it to almost like a credit check. You know, it's always a good idea every once in a while to check your credit, and make sure that, and obviously your bank will alert you if someone has actually, used your credit card or something like that. So it's a very similar process with your property. So if you have property in Ottawa County, you can go to miottawa.org/ROD and sign up for free to be notified if ever there is any document that's recorded pertaining to your property or with your name. And so that's a really crucial thing. Obviously, a lot of us have different life events that, even if you own the same house, maybe you've refinanced your home or you paid off a mortgage or something like that. It'll notify you of that. But then what it'll also do is notify you if anyone else records anything on your property that would essentially what we call cloud your chain of title. It's really important when you go to sell your home or borrow money against your home to have a clear chain of title, so the title companies and the lenders will look back through the history of your property to determine exactly, okay, there's no money owed, the rightful ownership of the property has been maintained. And that's really what Property Fraud Alert does, is allows you to have like that first look and make sure that if something were to happen, that you can immediately fight that. And we can obviously help homeowners do that as well.
In what ways? What can the Register of Deeds office do?
Yeah.
And what can not the Register of Deeds office do?
Great question, because, unfortunately, the law is limiting in terms of what ultimately it's almost like what I would call a passive process, right? The victim in this situation, the homeowner or property owner, ultimately has to sort of prove in a court that they were the victim. And it's almost a reverse of any other situation. And so that's where I think we do need some legislative change. So what happens if somebody were to, for example, I decided to record a quitclaim deed saying that you sold me or paid for property for $10. And the law stipulates that, we don't do an investigation to ensure that transaction happened. In fact, the law stipulates we can't. We literally just record your document as long as it meets statutory requirements. And so if I were to do that to you, you would literally have to take me to court and pay a $175 filing fee. It's a civil procedure where a judge would actually hear the case and then issue an order telling the Register of Deeds office to say, nope, we need you to take that off the public record. So, and the law basically hasn't changed in this process since the 1500s in England, and that's where it's a real struggle. I think some of the things that we could proactively be doing better, for example, one of the things would be to not charge the victim of a crime like this to go before a judge. So you're not having to pay out of pocket to go through the court system to get this adjudicated. Now, our court system has been phenomenal here in Ottawa County with addressing issues like this quickly, because you obviously do want it to get solved quickly. But even so, it would be great if we had a statutory ability to say to the victims of crimes like this, hey, you don't have to pay. The other thing I am very interested in is legislation that would require a photo ID anytime you record a document transferring property. That is simple. That is one small deterrent, a tool in a toolbox of a lot of different things that we can use. But if I'm having to actually show my photo ID, who I am, in front of somebody, or even electronically, there are secure ways we can do that electronically with recording property transfers. That is one deterrent, and it also helps us to catch somebody in the event that they fraudulently do that. So I think there are ways that we can do this better, but property fraud alerts is a simple and free first step in making sure that you can at least have that pre-notification.
Before we talk about how people can sign up for this, your suggestion about photo ID, what happens if it is a entity instead of an individual seeking to get the property?
Sure. I mean, and we have these cases, in for example, a lot of property is recorded in the name of a trust or an LLC, but there's always an agent, right? So there's always a human involved at some level. So the human agent would have to show ID and verify that information, and that would have to be transparent on the documentation that this is, John Doe is the agent of this LLC, and then we could proceed that way. And other states are doing this. It's just surprising how long it's taken for this to catch hold, but there are a few states already that are doing this, Florida and Texas, which are two big states and states with a lot of property transfer happening. And so I'm encouraged by that. We're kind of pushing for that on our end, and hopefully we'll see that happen in the legislature.
I think both of those states, especially with Florida, there's perception a lot of property transferring because it is a vacation spot. Yeah. People are buying second homes, and Texas, of course, being a little bit more of a welcoming area for people to move to because of no income taxes and stuff like that. Yeah,
good point. And in Florida's case too, oftentimes the vacation properties, the properties you're not living at, your main home, if you have an additional property, that's the kind of things that these people look for, right? So they're looking to potentially use properties that are not consistently occupied. That makes it easier. And so we have a lot of those in Ottawa County too, right? And we want to make sure that people are protected.
All right. How can people sign up for this property fraud alert?
Yeah, absolutely. miottawa.org/ROD is the easiest way to sign up. And you can actually even give us a call at 616-994-4531. And we can get you signed up that way as well. But it's super easy. You just enter your information. We'll give you a call, an email, a text, whatever, however you want to be communicated with. If we have a document that comes in your name with your property,
and it is a free service. It's not. There's no fee involved.
Yeah.
In this.
Yep. It's a completely free service.
All right.
We have over 14,000 people signed up. We'd love for you to be one of them.
Okay. You have 14,000. Let's say property owners that have signed up. Dare I ask? Okay, I dare ask. What percentage of property owners in the county is that?
It's actually a great question, and I do not know.
That's why I figured this was
it's a tough question to figure out, because obviously there's I can get the information on the number of parcels we have. It's a small percentage, ultimately. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of parcels.
Okay, that's maybe a fair question.
But of course, we have a lot of people that own more than one parcel of property, or a lot of entities as well. So,
but how many parcels are protected?
Yeah,
this way.
That's a good question. Out of the 1,400 or 14,000, we want to grow that number. Absolutely, I think it's really critical for us to do that. But I'll have to let you know.
Okay,
it's a good.
Don't need to bring it back. I'm not going to write a new story on it.
I'll shoot you an email though, and see what I find out.
Just a curious question. 6-1. If you got a curious question, we encourage you to ask your curious questions. 616-395-1450. One other curious question. All right. Whenever we talk about Register of Deeds, we tend to talk about property fraud alert. But that's not the only thing the Register of Deeds office does it?
Yeah. No, not really. Not at all, actually.
I mean, or the other thing we would talk about is weddings. And marriage license. So, I mean, those are the only two things that people would maybe associate the office, but there's some other things that the Register of Deeds is I think, legally required to handle.
Well, on the Register of Deeds side, the job number one for us is to put on public record every single event pertaining to real property in the county. And it's a really interesting thing because ultimately, it is quite often property is the most valuable asset that anybody owns. It's certainly the most valuable asset that I have is the house that we own, right? And so it is a really important part of our economy. It's an important part of family and individual wealth and prosperity, and it really is important to keep that protected and make sure that we have solid records. And so we have millions of records in the Register of Deeds office. They're all recorded electronically. So we have all of the scanned images of our original plats, recordings of property dating back to 1837 when Ottawa County and Michigan first became an entity officially as a state. And all of that information is stored in multiple locations. So we have off-site storage where we have physical retention of microfilm. We also have cloud storage of this. So, these records are hugely valuable, and we would never want to lose the historical record because, again, if you go to buy a house today and borrow money on it, the title company that insures that property and that insures that mortgage is looking back to the very beginning to say, is this property owned by the right person? And is this chain of title, we call it that chain of title, is that accurate through the very beginning for when the house was built or the property was first parceled out? And does anyone else owe money on it? Are there any taxes that are owed on it? So there's a lot, millions of records with regard to our property, and that's job number one for us at the Register of Deeds.
Now, does the Register of Deeds handle property that is owned by the citizens of the county or the citizens of a municipality, i.e., is there a deed to Windmill Island Gardens?
Yeah, absolutely there is. Yeah, and that's kind of the cool stuff. I mean, I'm a total nerd for this stuff, but you can go back and find, the beautiful handwritten deeds and indentures, for the Van de Leister property in Holland, right? And for so many things that are just really interesting. I happen of weird fact, we live in downtown Zeeland, and we own the house that Howard Miller raised his kids in. So the Howard Miller Clock Company is a couple blocks from our house, and it was so cool to go back and look at these, documents signed in the 1920s by Howard Miller when he first purchased our house.
Saying, that's a private property. I'm just saying,
with
public property
as well.
Is there a deed for, say, the Idaho Explorers Trail?
Yeah, I mean, it's technically owned by and deeded to the county. So the county obviously owns a lot of property through the park systems and other properties that we own. But yeah, exactly, public and private entities.
Just asking a question, being curious.
Good question, yeah. That one, at least I do know the answer.
All right. Since last we chatted, there was... I can't find the story on our wires, but I brought it up with Bob Janetsky. I'm going to bring it up with you to give you a chance to talk it up a little bit. After the primary election in Michigan, which was the 3rd of August, no, take that back, 4th. November 3rd is general election. Right. August 4th was primary. So it was August 4th, but I think it was like a week after that. it was National Poll Workers Day to try to recruit people to be poll workers, especially with the thrust for the November 3rd general election. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to try to talk up, get the Uncle Sam, I want you.
That's right.
Put up
Amen to that.
Put up at the Fillmore Street complex.
It is so true. If you go to miottawa.org/work-elections, that's where you'll be able to find out a lot of information about what this takes, what is involved with working an election, how, what are the qualifications, what can you kind of expect from the training aspect, or how long you expect to work. There's a lot of information that we have there for folks who are curious, and of course, an ability to sign up, and we'll contact you. Our local clerks will contact you. But we always need election workers somewhere in the county. I mean, we have about a little over 1,200, actually a little over close to 1,400 election workers in any given major election cycle, and this is certainly a major election year for us. So 30,000 in the state of Michigan. Think about that. There's a lot of people, everyday normal citizens that come together in a bipartisan way, because we have to have both sides represented at the table, Republicans and Democrats, that make our elections happen. And we just couldn't do it without these guys, and they're amazing. So again, we also get paid for it, by the way. So it is actually not a completely volunteer activity. I will say a lot of our jurisdictions here pay pretty darn well, $22, $23 an hour to work an election for a full day. There's early voting that happens, so that's a 9-day period of time leading into November. It's a great way to earn a little extra cash, but more importantly, it's a really good way to serve, and we need you. So feel free to check us out.
And let me bring up a point. Again, we brought it up last Wednesday, and we had Bob Janetsky, and I'm going to bring it up with you as well. You go through training with the municipality or with your office on this?
Good question. So in some cases, it's with the municipality. Our larger municipalities have the ability to do their own training. So Michigan allows a jurisdiction that's 10,000 people or bigger to do their own training. So in some cases, City of Holland, Georgetown Township, they'll do mostly their own training, but we do a lot of collaboration even with them. And so we train roughly 1,000 election workers in a given cycle at the Ottawa County Clerk's office.
And then when they get trained through your office, then they can spread out. Like somebody who lives in Holland might be an election worker, say, in GT, the place to be.
That's right.
Where and somebody in Hudsonville might be getting a spot in Allendale.
Yeah, absolutely. You can work anywhere, actually anywhere in Michigan. Mm-hmm. So it's a good flexibility.
Let's get to the phones before we get to the break. Good morning. You're on the line with Clerk Justin Roebuck.
I wanted to know if Jocelyn Benson screwed up the election and got a whole bunch of ballots in, and how did she do that, if that's true?
All right, well, we'll get his answer right now. Thank you very much for the call.
Well, it's a fair question. I don't exactly know what you mean by a whole bunch of ballots in, but what I can tell you is that regardless of who is the Secretary of State or who even is a county clerk randomly in a given one of our 83 counties, no one person has the ability to put their finger on the scales of an election and rig an election. And that is because we have, over the past 175 years, figured out ways to have checks and balances in this process and design it that way. So even though, maybe what you're referring to is this whole thing, we've talked a lot about it during COVID in 2020, Secretary of State's office mailed absentee ballot applications, not ballots, but applications to every single registered voter and said, hey, you have the opportunity to fill this out and get a ballot. Now that, that was fought in the courts and ultimately determined that she had the right to do that. That was controversial. But at the end of the day, there's so many checks and balances that go into that process. If you were to get a ballot and have to return it, it goes through a bunch of checks and in the process of verifying that you actually were the individual who returned it. We actually have a couple of instances out of 2024 under investigation where individuals have signed ballots that were not theirs, and they're being prosecuted for that. And so that's a real thing. I would highly encourage you never to break the law when it comes to returning somebody else's ballot, because that's a felony, and you get prosecuted and put in jail for that. And that's happened. And obviously, so I guess the point there is that regardless of whether or not, and you could certainly make the argument whether one official or another official is doing the right thing or following policies that we like or disagree with, but no one person has the ability to rig an entire election. It is just way too complex. 30,000 election workers, at the end of the day, they're all looking at it. They're all checking each other's work. And elections happen at the local level, in your neighborhood, at your precinct. It's not like all the ballots are being counted in Lansing. They're being counted, in Holland, in Ward 2 at the church, at the Methodist church, right? And everywhere else. So I think, we can at least be confident in that part of the process. And it's important to fight for the policies that keep our elections secure.
Justin, I brought this up last week. I'm going to bring it up again. Proposition 1 on the statewide ballot, that is whether or not a constitutional convention should be convened. It has failed in 3 previous opportunities. It has to come up every 16 years, and this is the 16-year time. But we are seeing the no votes, which was about, was really, 70% the first time. It's down to maybe 2 out of 3 saying no, but it's gone down.
Yeah.
And there are some who are calling for a constitutional convention. The reason why I bring it up is that if it does pass, that might be a logistical nightmare for clerks.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight time frame, because basically it calls for a primary election, because these are the delegates are elected.
And then let me just put it in here.
Yeah.
The delegates convention, there will be 1 delegate for each House district and 1 delegate for each Senate district.
Yeah, correct. So it's essentially kind of considered a state election. And so every House member has or every House district, as you're saying, has a seat available. A primary election has to occur because they're technically partisan offices. That primary election would have to be scheduled for February the following year, following the passage of the amendment, if it happened. And then a general election would have to occur in May.
The first Tuesday in May.
Yeah, and so it's a very quick, very tight time frame and turnaround, which, of course, we have similar turnaround from August to November, but this is, even tighter in terms of, I believe it's scheduled for the last Tuesday in February and the first Tuesday in May. So a lot of things, a lot of moving parts have to come together for this, for a constitutional convention to happen. Then, of course, obviously after that, the delegates actually have to meet, and I forget the exact time frame that they have to basically, open-ended, right? Rewrite the state's constitution if need be. So it'd be fascinating to see if, where the voters are at on this.
Logistically, it might be a nightmare.
Yeah,
in more ways than one. If you need more information, not only we talked earlier about the property fraud alert, but also if you'd like to be a poll worker, best thing to do, go to the webpage, which is myottawa.org. That is myottawa.org. There are separate departments for county clerk and register of deeds, and you can get more information on those through that website. As always, Justin Roebuck, thank you very much for spending some time with us. I think September is off for you.
I think so. I think we have a scheduling conflict or something.
So we'll talk to you in October.
It's great to be with you, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin Roebuck, on 99.7 1450 WHTC Holland's Cool FM. Michael Kastner is an NBC News Brief, followed by WHTC News. More talk at the town following the break, including Brian Spencer's What's New Around Holland, and we'll chat with Captain Matt Winters of the Salvation Army. Tiger Baseball this afternoon, Tigers and Tampa Bay Rays, 12:45 from Comerica Park on WHTC Holland's Cool FM.